What is up, my fellow YouTube friends? It's Parmida. Today I'm really excited about this video because I'm going to be telling you guys my experiences with the DAT, what I learned from the first time taking it to the second time I took it, how I improved my score, techniques, tips, and tricks regarding the dental admissions test. So I hope you like this video. Alright, let's get started.
I know that you're afraid, it feels like every day things are slipping away, you're slipping away.
Before I begin, I wanted to give a brief intro about the DAT. If you haven't taken it yet, here's what you can expect. You start with the natural sciences section. 90 minutes, 100 questions. You'll have 40 bio questions, 30 gen chem, and 30 OChem. After that, you'd move on to perceptual ability, which consists of keyhole, angle ranking, top front end, hole punching, cube counting, and pattern folding. You have 60 minutes for 90 questions. After you finish these two sections, there's an optional 15-minute break that I 100% recommend you take. You can call your mom, eat a snack, go to the bathroom, drink some water, take a breather, whatever, but I highly recommend taking as much of those 15 minutes as you can. Third section is reading comprehension. In this section, you will have 3 14 to 18 paragraph long articles that you need to read and answer 50 questions, and you have 60 minutes to do all that. Last but not least, you finish off with quantitative reasoning, where you're given 45 minutes to answer 40 questions. The entire exam takes about 5 hours to complete. Once you hit submit, you have to do some other things. However, both times after I submitted, I kind of blacked out, so I don't actually know what happens, but basically you submit, do some things, then you get your score, and that's pretty much it. Okay, now for my experiences. Let's set the scene. It is currently 2017, summer before my senior year of college. Homegirl has decided that she's gonna study for the DAT. Now, to be completely honest, I remember very little about how I actually studied the first time because there was no structure at all to how I was studying or what I was studying. But this is what a typical study day for me looked like back in 2017. Hello. So I am currently editing this video and I realized that I deleted, lost, I don't even know what happened to this clip when I'm describing to you guys what I did to study the first time around in my study schedule. So I'm just gonna film this right now. But basically what I did was I would wake up at 7 a.m. and I would study until like 5 p.m. Then I'd take a break for a couple of hours, have dinner, hang out, and study again from like 7 p.m. until 2 a.m. In case it's not obvious, that is not sustainable at all. So a month into my studying, I moved back to Waco so that I could take Physics 2 in the lab during summer school. While devoting 2 to 7 hours a day being in class and attending lab, I still had to study for my exams and quizzes for physics. Also had to make sure that I wasn't forgetting to study for the DAT. So around that time, I was studying anywhere from 14 to 16 hours a day while not really prioritizing my health or my sleep. And when I tell you I burnt out, I burnt out. While I was studying, I wasn't actually studying effectively. I was gauging my understanding based off if I was crossing things off of my to-do list. I was using DAT Bootcamp and they had guidelines that I was following extremely strictly and not giving myself the opportunity to evaluate if I'm even learning the material. I would just go through the material and try to learn it, and if I learned it, great. If I didn't, I still had to move on to the next thing. I'm not really gonna go into too much more detail because A, I kind of blocked that part of my life out, and B, I mean, you know how this story ends. I take the DAT and I perform terribly. I end up making a 17 and it just really sucked because I had devoted all of that time and effort to studying, but I still performed so badly. I honestly thought that I was stupid and that I should just wave goodbye to my dreams of becoming a dentist. Fast forward 8 months and now it is currently June 2018. I just graduated from Baylor and I've taken 2 weeks off to hang out with my family. I knew I had to reevaluate how I studied the first time so that I could make sure that I did better this time. So after reevaluating, I came up with 3 steps to ensure that I would do better. First, set realistic goals. If you're like me and you feel more productive checking things off a to-do list, then make sure the things that you're putting on your to-do list are realistic. You can actually get those things done in the time allotted. I had a little notebook, and every single day I would write out exactly everything I needed to get done that day. And next to each task, I would write how long I would approximate it would take me to do that given task, whether it was watching a video, taking a quiz, taking notes, whatever. If after filling out what I needed to do for the day, it still went over the allotted time, then I would just push it to the next day. And this was a key factor in making sure that I didn't burn out. Second, research. I was more successful taking the DAT the second time around, partly because I did my research. I found myself constantly Googling how to best study for the DAT, or how to best study for reading comprehension or quantitative reasoning or whatever. I also read many articles, and I took from those posts what I thought really applied to me, and I implemented them in my studying. But I didn't only do this once at the very beginning of my studying. I was constantly trying to become a more efficient and better studier. Step number 3, be flexible. This is honestly probably the biggest indicator of whether or not you're gonna burn out. I recommend that you study first for a few days. Then in that time, you figure out what study methods work best for you and how fast you're getting through things. After a few days of studying, sit down and make a schedule for yourself that you know you'll stick to. But if you make the schedule after you've been studying for a few days, you'll be better prepared and better equipped to write a very concise and efficient and effective schedule. Here's a breakdown of how I did it. I spent 6 weeks studying the second time around. I would wake up from 7 a.m. and study until 6 p.m. with like a 2-hour break somewhere in the middle of that day. I treated it like a full-time job. I clocked in at the same time every single morning, and I would study, and then I would take a break if I needed it, and I normally did need it, and then I would study until I was done for the day. No more, no less. I would go until 6, and then if I was tired at 6, then I would be done, and that was it. There were some days that I had a burst of energy at 9:30 p.m., but I knew that it was going to be short-lived, and if I used that energy and studied, I would have for sure burnt out. I remember one day at the beginning of my studying, my dad was home for lunch, and it was during my study break, and I was telling him that I had already had a cup of coffee that morning, and I was tired, and I felt like I couldn't really go on with the rest of my day. I just felt fuzzy and cloudy up in my head, and I wasn't really studying efficiently. I was telling him that maybe I should just make a second cup of coffee and push through how I'm feeling and get over it. And he looked at me kind of puzzled and kind of worried that I didn't know this already, but he looked at me and very matter-of-factly said, "If you're tired, why don't you rest?" And I swear I heard the Hallelujah chorus in the background. I mean, what he was saying was so simple, yet for some reason, I had never implemented that. If I'm tired, I should rest. Because at the end of the day, it's your body that's going to get you to that exam day. And if you're not treating it right, then it's not gonna get you there. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So you wanna have as much energy the day before the exam as you did the very first day you started studying. Now for a breakdown of what I actually did to study. I used 3 different studying platforms. I used DAT Bootcamp, CourseSaver, and QVault. My main source of learning came from CourseSaver, and I highly recommend it. I would watch a chapter's worth of videos for every section, Bio, QR, Gen Chem, OChem, every single day. And then the next day, I would take the associated quizzes. I don't recommend taking the quizzes right after you just learned the material, because when you take the quiz immediately after learning it, you don't know if you got the question right because you remembered the instructor telling you 5 seconds ago, or if you actually know it because you learned the material. Chad was the instructor for CourseSaver, and he is absolutely amazing. He's so funny, and he gets to the point, which is something that I really appreciated. Dr. Mike with Bootcamp, he would tell me all these great facts and details. I would sit there and vigorously study and take notes over everything Dr. Mike was telling me, and then after 2 minutes he'd say, but you don't need to know that. and I would kind of die a little bit on the inside. But Chad wasn't like that. Chad just tells you exactly what you need to know, no more, no less. That's not to say that I hated Dr. Mike's videos. I think they're super beneficial. However, I only really use DAT Bootcamp as supplementary for if I didn't understand something on Course Saver. So I finished all of Course Saver's Gen Chem, QR, and OChem videos, and I took really good notes. And I also made flashcards for OChem, the reactions and reagents and anything OChem related, and I would go through those about 20 minutes a day, a few times a week. And that was what really helped me with OChem, is just the repetition and seeing that all the time. I also use Bootcamp for the PAT generator and the practice tests, which I will get to in a little bit. So once I finished all of my Course Saver videos and took notes and learned all of it, I realized that my weakest section was still bio. So I ended up using QVault for bio. So what was nice is while the questions on QVault were really hard, they're very similar to the style of questions you'll see on the exam. So what I really liked about QVault is that it would give an explanation of why each answer choice was wrong and why yours was correct. After reviewing my exams on QVault, I would then make a Quizlet over all of the questions and answers that I either got wrong or had guessed on. So I'd spend one whole day taking QVault bio exams, and then I'd spend the next day reviewing and making Quizlets and studying the material, referencing my notes, and making sure that I wasn't making the same mistakes over and over again. Reading comprehension was the trickiest for me to learn how to excel in, because anytime you ask somebody how to be a better reader, they're just like, well, you keep reading. The thing is about the DAT's reading comprehension section is that you have to utilize specific methods that work best for you in order to make sure that you're using your time as efficiently and effectively as possible. So I went looking for real techniques. I was feeling optimistic about all the ways that I had learned how to better myself in QR, OChem, Gen Chem, bio, all of that. And so I did what I had been doing this entire time, and I researched on the internet techniques and methods on how to be a better reading comprehension test taker. The biggest piece of advice I can give for reading comprehension is to learn those strategies, practice the strategies, and figure out what works best for you. And then once you determine which method you're going to be implementing on test day, then practice that on every single practice test, every time that you read anything. The method I used for reading comprehension is called roadmap the passage. I found that crushthedat.com actually ended up explaining it much better than I could have, and I'll link that website down in the description box. Basically, this method involves making a roadmap of the passage before you even start reading the questions. First, you count how many paragraphs there are in your passage, and on your laminated sheet of paper that you're given on test day, you'll write out 1 to 18, 1 to 14, however many paragraphs there are. Then you skim each paragraph and write down any keywords, dates, names, topics, anything that you find that might stand out to you in that paragraph. Once you do that for every paragraph, then you proceed to the questions, where you will use your roadmap that you've already made to answer those questions. I know it sounds like you're taking a lot of time out of your 60 minutes to roadmap your passage. However, the time you end up saving helps you so much. I actually ended up having time left over at the end of my reading comprehension so that I could go back and review some questions that I had skipped or was just unsure of. So the quantitative reasoning section of the exam is a little bit different because it's math, but not really. They're basically testing you to see how well you know how to answer the questions. And the only way you learn how to answer those questions is via tips and tricks. Chad from Course Saver would give us a question. And yes, there is a long way to figure out the answer that requires actual math, or he would tell you to make a table, then you would figure out something that would have probably taken you a minute and a half. You would figure that out in like 10-15 seconds just because you learned that. The QR section isn't really how well you know math or how smart you are or your logic or anything like that. It's mostly, do you know how to take this exam? All right, now for the full-length practice tests. Like I said earlier, I studied for 6 weeks. So everything that I just described to you happened in the first 4 weeks. But then once 2 weeks before the exam hit, I started taking practice tests. And I used the practice tests on DAT Bootcamp's website. They have 10, but I only ended up needing 4. While I was strict with my studying, I was even more strict with my exam schedule because I was nearing the finish line and I did not want to jeopardize burning out or getting too tired or just not making it to the finish line. And I did not want to waste any of my time by not studying efficiently. Let's say that I would take a full-length practice exam on Monday. Well, I wouldn't do anything for the rest of the day. Then on Tuesday, I would go through and review the entire exam and make sure that I was taking notes over things that I had missed. And then on Wednesday, I would actually sit down with my notes open and reread and relearn concepts that I had missed, just to make sure that I wasn't gonna miss them again. Thursday, practice test. Friday, review the material. Saturday, notes, notes, notes. And that was basically my schedule for 2 weeks until I took my exam July 15th. I did not study the day before the exam. However, I couldn't help myself from reviewing some QR material for like 45 minutes the day before, but that was it. I didn't allow myself to touch any more notes as much as I wanted to. So I just let myself rest, and that was so important for me. The morning of the exam, my boyfriend Joseph went to IHOP and got me breakfast of champions, and I was ready to go. So then I headed off to the testing center. 5 hours went by and I took my exam and everything happened, and then I submitted. Like I said earlier in the video, I kind of blacked out once I submitted, but I think things happened and I took a survey. But once I saw that my score on the screen said 21, I lost my marbles. I was freaking out. Getting my score was the second greatest day of my life. The first being when I got into dental school. I did that because of my hard work. And I had a 17 looming over my head for the longest time. And I could have let that stop me, and I could have let that deter me from taking the DAT again and trying to become a better student. I immediately started crying, and I was looking around at everybody to make sure that this was not a simulation, that this was real life. I was so extremely proud of my 21, and I still am. And it was because it was my hard work and dedication that allowed me to bring up my score from a 17, which is 50th percentile, all the way to 21, which is, thank goodness, a 90th percentile score. Well, that's my DAT story. I hope this inspired you, and hopefully you learned a thing or two about how to conquer the DAT. I hope you remember that even if you have a bad DAT score, that there is nothing keeping you from doing better. Just work hard, believe in yourself, and know that you are smart enough and all your hard work will pay off. Also, if you wanted to see some wholesome screenshots of my parents' reaction when I told them that I got a 21 on the DAT, then here you go. I'm signing off for now. Until next time, stay safe, stay hardworking, and stay flossing. Bye guys! Mwah. What's up, my fellow YouTube friends? I was a burnt and crispy piece of bacon. Ooh. That's how burnt out I was. Is that my mom?
Thoughts disorganized, can't seem to dry your eyes, and chaos is collapsing from your mind. And you say that you're fine, but now you're out of time. Out of time.